Welcome to the King of the Court podcast with Ben Riggs and Ben Staten.
All right, welcome to the King of the Court podcast. I'm Ben Riggs. This is Ben Staten.
Yep.
So it was a relatively quiet weekend in the NBA. You had a minor little trade out of the Dallas area for some Slovenian point guard and Anthony Davis, and then last night you had the San Antonio Spurs finalize a trade with the Sacramento Kings that sends De'Aaron Fox down to San Antonio, pairing him with Wemby. I think the first big question is Stephon Castle about to turn over the number 5?
The answer to that is no. They've already made that clear. Also, I think under NBA rules, you can't change numbers associations to a player mid-season. I think you have to wait. But no, I think he's going to have to go with like number 55, or something like that, like we'll have for. Or make some other convoluted explanation, like he's 41 because 4 + 1 = 5. Yeah.
I think that the pairing between Wemby and De'Aaron Fox will be impactful enough that while Stephon Castle, who's clearly highly valued by the Spurs, which I think we'll get into in a second, I think the big 1-2 punch in San Antonio for a while is going to be De'Aaron Fox and Victor Wembanyama. So they may not be able. You may not be able to call them Area 51, but they're going to be the problem that everybody's worrying about and trying to figure out.
No, I think this is a fantastic trade for the Spurs. I think what they gave up: Trey Jones, Zach Collins, CD Sissoko. Technically 4 firsts, but one of those is not conveying this year. It's a lottery protected Charlotte pick. They only gave up 1 pick that is San Antonio's. That's in 2027, where they already have a Hawks unprotected pick in that draft, so they'll still have a pick in the 2027 draft. It's going to be better than the Spurs 2027 pick, and will be almost undoubtedly. This is they got Wemby's wingman. They got the future of this Spurs team is going to be the pick and roll. It is going to be the 2-man game between Fox and Wemby, and Wemby has not had a guard with the explosive speed and athleticism of De'Aaron Fox on pick and roll.
Well, and to be fair, very few people have. De'Aaron Fox is exceptionally fast, and Victor Wembanyama is only in his second year. I mean, the Spurs have done a really good job at landing an All-NBA caliber point guard.
Without giving up any core pieces.
Well, and I mean, even beyond not giving up core pieces, I mean, I think getting Zach Collins out of there is a addition by subtraction type thing. And, I like Trey Jones. I think he's a serviceable backup point guard in the NBA. But you certainly didn't lose much there, especially when you consider the fact that you're just going to demote your Hall of Fame level point guard, who's sort of in the latter years of his career down to second string. So, I think that the Spurs have, it goes without saying, I don't think anybody expected anything other than this, but the Spurs have won this trade in a big way.
And I think that this is now a team which I would put as a shoo-in for the play-in tournament at the minimum. I think that they're absolutely, they're...
Oh, sure, especially as bundled up as the Western Conference is. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they're better than a play-in team.
Yeah, I could see it being at least making... top 6. I think that this will unlock Wemby in a way that the previous point guards haven't. One of the problems the Spurs have had is Chris Paul is a maestro. He's one of the greatest passers of all time, but he cannot get by a defender anymore because just of his diminished speed. And so the pick and roll with Wemby, that you would have defenders that would just sag off of Paul. They didn't fear him driving to the rim. They would hedge. They'd play gimmick defenses. It was all about preventing Wemby from getting the ball. You try that shit with De'Aaron Fox, I mean, it's a guaranteed bucket. He's one of the best finishers in the paint in the league for a guard. He is. His speed that you can't help off of Fox. Like the defender, there's not a way you can't put 2 defenders on Wemby in a pick and roll in that case.
Yeah, there was also a game here very recently. I can't remember who it was against. Came down to the final seconds. Chris Paul took the last shot with an elbow jumper. I mean, teams in those areas just load up against Wemby and deny him the ball. Yeah. And it makes it very difficult for San Antonio to close out games. But if you try to guard De'Aaron Fox the way you guarded Chris Paul in that moment, De'Aaron Fox doesn't just have explosive speed. He's probably one of the best, if not the best, fourth quarter clutch scorers in the league. So I think in some of those close games, you'll see the win-loss ratio tilting more towards wins for San Antonio as well.
Yeah, I also think that the coverage you've seen in some parts of the world of the NBA media about this Castle and Fox match, yes, they 100% do. They absolutely do.
Oh, I hadn't even seen that. That seems like a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, both of them can generate shots at the rim for themselves. Both of them are aggressive. They have a great speed and strength, 1-2 punch. This is, you need a bigger guard next to Fox to play against the Lucas of the world. You to play against, you just need to have a strong physical
play
guard.
Against who?
That guy,
slob?
but
not that good.
Yeah. But this is a fantastic trade. It's going to unlock, I think, the future. I think a lot of this talk about he's not going to age well. Buddy, he's 27. You got 3 more years until he hits 30. He hasn't yet entered his athletic prime, which tends to be 28, 29. I think people are like discounting his ability to get mid-range jump shots. Like, he's not just attacking the rim. He can score in the mid-range. He's somewhat of a streaky 3-point shooter, but people are talking about him like he's Russell Westbrook. He thought 37% last year. Like, he's a good shot.
What's he shooting this year?
I believe like 32, 33.
Yeah, that's the only thing I still see. But I mean, look,
his shots are going to be a lot more open.
Well, the thing I'll say about De'Aaron Fox and the Spurs, though, is it's actually quite similar in some regards to LA's side of the Luka trade, in that, like, if you're sitting here analyzing the trade based on whether they can win a championship this year, like, you've kind of missed the plot, right? Like, LA signs on to Luka because they get Luka for 10 years. It was a no-brainer. With De'Aaron Fox, like, you're not, this team isn't complete. Like,
No.
Yes, 100%. A backcourt that's shooting under 33%, has a backcourt with an under 33% average from 3. Yeah, like, you need better perimeter shooting on the floor to win a championship in the NBA. That's not the standard by which San Antonio is being judged in this moment. The standard by which San Antonio is being judged in this moment is whether De'Aaron Fox pairs Wemby with a elite perimeter player, sort of a Robin to his Batman. And you can begin to build out the team from there. Like, you can add perimeter shooting from the wings with, upgrading the Harrison Barnes spot or the Jeremy Sohan spot. I mean, I think it definitely, I mean, one thing I would say is, like, I really like Jeremy Sohan. But I think that the need for perimeter shooting on this team, in high minutes, with playing high minutes, I think, like, it's kind of sealed the fate for Jeremy Sohan long term. It's really hard to see where he fits into the broader picture of the San Antonio Spurs, because I have serious doubts about the prospects of De'Aaron Fox and Stephon Castle becoming elite 3-point shooters.
I would agree with that. I think, we've had some disagreements about Castle. I think he has clear borderline all NBA potential if he can get a workable shot. I think, his ability to get to where he wants to on the basketball court, his ability to finish at the rim at the level that he is currently it's unique for rookies. You don't see this very often. Like this, he is, he plays under control. All that's missing right now to make him a polished NBA player, is a jump shot. Now, problem is the jump shot's pretty bad. Like, he's shooting 27% from 3. Like, that's not, like, you can't just say all.
And to be clear, I'm not saying he's not going to improve as a shooter. Yeah. That is not my point. I think that he will improve as a shooter. I think the idea that he's going to be shooting 38, 39, 40% from 3 is
that would be surprising. That would be surprising.
I'm skeptical of that. Now, I think he will shoot as well as De'Aaron Fox shoots from 3. But another interesting point that I heard someone raise and I'd love to give them credit, but the last 36 hours have been a blur, and I don't remember who said it. But one thing I would like to point out too about the Wemby De'Aaron Fox matchup, where you could potentially see De'Aaron Fox be more effective, is it was a former player, and they were talking about the idea of a two-man game with two left-handed players, which is what you have with Fox and Sabonis.
Yep.
And it's actually much more difficult for two left-hand players to play that way. Because you've got you coming off the pick and roll with your passing with your left hand to a player's right hand, and you just see, or right hand to left hand, and you just see less efficiency in that way, because they're not using their dominant hands. Whereas in this case, you're going to have a left-handed player in De'Aaron Fox paired with Victor Wembanyama, who's a right-handed player, and you should see it be a more a more fluid pairing because of that. And what's interesting to me about that is it's not like Sabonis and Fox were not a fluid pairing. They worked very well together.
No, it 100% is. As a lefty myself, one of the things you learn very quick when you both being a lefty and coaching lefties, as I've done, is left-handed players are more left-handed than right-handed players are right-handed. And what I specifically mean by that is that left-handed players have to train themselves from the early age because they have to do everything mirrored. Everything that's being taught is usually by a right-handed person. So lefties are learning it, like through a mirror, and it's harder for them to they become more reliant on their dominant hand than right-handed players. Left-handed players tend to take longer to develop a right hand. They tend to be, it tends to be harder to, instruct them on basic footwork. And because again, you're talking about teaching a 6-year-old the proper footwork when he has to reverse the feet that he's being, that everyone else is being taught. So, having two lefties, it causes chaos for teams typically, and especially if they have to do the handoff. But the other thing I think that gets forgotten in this discussion, especially when you hear the national media talking about Fox, the problems with the Kings is not their offense. In fact, 2 years ago, they had the all-time most efficient and most powerful offense in NBA history.
100%.
This was their offense worked really, really, really well. The problem was their defense was abysmal, and that wasn't Fox wasn't he's not this great on defense, but that was largely in part due to the fact that the Kings had no rim protection, and Sabonis, while he fights hard, he's undersized. He doesn't have super long arms, and his athleticism is not he doesn't have very good vertical jumping ability. So teams will finish through him and over him. He's really good at rebounding, but you can score on Sabonis that. He probably on an elite winning team needs to be a 4 instead of a 5. And as he's developing his 3-point shot, that'll be more and more the case. But back to the Spurs, Fox has proven he can be the focal point, the point guard on an absolutely elite offense. A title in terms of just efficiency, production, and points per game. That was a title winning group, and that part is getting forgotten in the discussion right now. The Spurs got a player who has, I think that you're not going to have the defensive problems that you had in Sacramento with Wemby.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. If your point is that De'Aaron Fox as an offensive player is an elite player who gives you and like Sabonis, it's a contrast. It's not a guy imagine the pairing with Derek Lively, where you have a hyper athletic, fast, big that's crashing the rim as well. The contrast there is actually quite nice, where there's different pace coming off of the pick and roll. I think that's great. I also think but then the backside of your point is that yes, De'Aaron Fox has defensive liabilities, which have been pointed out ad nauseum in Sacramento, but there's nothing to mask those defensive liabilities in Sacramento because you don't have much rim protection, whereas in San Antonio you have the greatest rim protection in NBA history. And so, we don't really give a shit about your defense.
Oh yeah, and it's also you now given the Spurs a fast breaking potential. This team did not have someone who could just take the ball and run. Wemby does want to run. Now, the question becomes, what does he want to do? He wants to shoot a 3-pointer on the run. But, Fox attacking and Wemby trailing and then just get, Wemby getting a pass back, for open 3-pointers, that's going to put a lot of pressure on defense. It's gonna. One of the things it's also going to do is it's going to prevent defenses from being able to get set and not, what defenses like when Wemby plays against a defense that's not set and like organized, he tears them apart typically because that's when he's able to take advantage of matchups. Is when there's not like walls of defenders. Teams like to put walls of defenders. They have the first guys being really physical with Wemby. They have the help defender, and they have the third line. And that's the defense you want to put on him because what it does is it forces. He looks at that and he's like, might as well shoot a jump shot, and then it sort of reverts him into becoming a jump shooter. Yeah. And no, I think this is. I'm ecstatic about this. I also think that we have to give props and credit to the Spurs front office. They negotiated a fantastic deal for themselves. Now they had like a good hand, given that Fox had indicated he wanted to go there, but they got a All NBA caliber player without giving up a rotation piece and not giving up, and like giving up less draft assets than the Knicks gave up for Mikal Bridges. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the interesting things about this trade happening within 24 hours of the Luka trade is that you actually see sort of in one instance you see, I mean, a superstar who really occupies like rarefied air in terms of like prominence. I mean, he's a global superstar. Just kind of in a just rarefied air with like 3 or 4 other guys, who is traded in the middle of the night without being notified of the trade or anything like that, never having requested the trade. In fact, all indications were that he wanted to
play his career out there.
Play his career out there. And you see a superstar sort of being sent away without, really any thought of what he would want or where he would want to be. And in the case of De'Aaron Fox, you see a situation where he maximized his leverage by indicating like, this is where I want to be, and kind of shooing off a lot of other teams by suggesting I won't, sign an extension with you. And I think that's an interesting contrast as well, and it certainly helped the Spurs. I don't think the Kings did not get better. They were not left empty-handed. They did get Zach LaVine, who's playing very well this year. But, the takeaway from this is that the Spurs have taken a major step towards finding that pairing that Wembanyama needs moving forward for them to be a real contender.
No, this is. I agree. This is the first building block for a future dynasty, the future Wemby dynasty under San Antonio. I think that.
That and Castle. I think they clearly believe Castle's a part of that.
And the most important thing here, this isn't the end. They have the assets to make one, if not 2, major additions. They have a likely lottery pick from Atlanta this year. They have what's going to be a good 15 to 20 range pick from San Antonio. They have they have this year's Atlanta pick, a swap next year, and Atlanta's unprotected first in 27. Given Atlanta's injury history, those could be very valuable picks. They have 6 of their 7 picks that they can trade on their own side. They have Dallas's 2029 unprotected pick swap. They have a 2028 pick swap with Boston. They have a 2031 pick swap with Minnesota. That they have all the assets they need to really make a difference. And like build a title contender and build a dynasty.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point to end on, is that the Spurs have really set themselves up, and they're going to be an interesting team. They're an exciting team. We're obviously going to be covering them a lot. If you're a Spurs fan, like, subscribe, follow us on YouTube, share our content with your friends and family, because you're going to be getting a lot of Spurs content, Wemby content, whatever the hell the new Area 51 is content. So until next time, y'all take care.
Peace.